I managed to add 25 kg to my bench press in just a year. And in this video, I'm going to share exactly what I did to make that happen, as well as some of the things that I'd avoid. Now, before this video starts, I have got my free guide on building muscle down below. So if this seems interesting to you, or maybe you could use some help, then take a look and let me know what you think. So naturally, the first thing you should be doing to increase your bench press is actually your warm-up. Now, a lot of people, I see them not warming up properly. Now, what I'd recommend for a warm-up is you want to start with a foam roller, okay? Really roll your back out. Roll your back out with a foam roller so you get nice and loose. And you basically want to loosen up your lower back and upper back, because then you're going to be able to create more arch, and ultimately that's going to add stability, as well as also decreasing the range of motion slightly so that you can actually do the rep easier. What I would say is use a foam roller, make sure you're on that for a couple of minutes before you actually bench, and then also lie on the bench with the foam roller under your lower back with your arse and then your shoulders touching the bench still. And doing that, it's going to feel so uncomfortable to start with, but that's going to really help in terms of making sure that you can create as much arch as possible. And then as well as that, the obvious things like band work, warm up your triceps, your shoulders, rotator cuffs. I have got a video on my Instagram, so go check that out. It basically has like my full bench warm up. That's something that I do every time I bench, just to make sure that I can bench as much as possible. Now, the second thing I say is make sure you pause every rep. You see so many people, I used to do the same thing, bouncing the bar off their chest for every rep. And, you know, that might feel cool, but it doesn't look good. And also, if you bounce it off your chest at the bottom, you're taking away pretty much all chest activation in that rep. The issue with that is that you're not then strengthening your pecs or shoulders or triceps at all. And so really make sure you pause every rep, because if you want to go for a 1 rep max and really test your bench, if you have to bounce it off your chest, do that. But that's going to be so much easier if you're pausing the reps when you're actually trying to progress your bench press, because you have to remember your pec is at its weakest when it's stretched. And so that's the part of the movement you need to train the most. Okay, so also, something that's slightly overlooked is equipment. Now, when I say equipment, I only really mean two things. I mean your wrist wraps and also your shoes, which, again, most people would not think shoes, but yes, shoes. So, you want to make sure you're wearing some flat shoes. So, flat that are nice and thin because you can feel the ground easier, and also make sure they're grippy, because we'll get onto this later in the video, but leg drive is so important, and you can't leg drive if you're wearing running shoes that are mad slippy or something like that. You need to be wearing grippy, thin shoes. And then also wrist wraps. So let me get mine. Now, these are my wrist wraps, okay? So these are A7 wrist wraps. These are actually mad long. Let me get back here. They are 1 meter long. You don't have to get ones that are 1 meter long, but just get decent wrist wraps, because also these are IPF approved. So I'm planning on competing in powerlifting at some point, probably this year. But wrist wraps are important, because the thing is, right, when you've got the bar in your hands, if you've got a lot of weight in there, yes, you should have it stacked properly so that it doesn't roll out your hands. But there's a chance that will happen, and it just adds that element of stability, so you don't have to think about so much the position of the bar, because it'll basically just hold your hand in the right place anyway. So let me just show you as well how to set these up, because a lot of people you see wrapping it around this bit of their wrist down here, and then okay, so I do apologise if that was a bit underexposed. I had the ISO set on auto, but now it's on a set amount, so it should be okay now. But anyway, so wrist wraps. A lot of people wrap them around this part of their wrist, and then you just don't get the stability. You need to make sure that when you're wrapping your wrist wraps, right, and 1 meter long wrist wraps, they take ages to do up. But so you can see my wrist wrap now is covering the bottom of my hand as well as my wrist. So now it's so much harder for my wrist to bend back. And so this is how I wear them. I just fold the thumb loop down so it doesn't get in the way, because the thing is as well, you want to rest your thumb sort of outwards, and if you've got this pulling your thumb in, you can't do that as much. You want to rest your thumb almost outwards, but not round the bar, not suicide grip, just make sure it's kind of to the side a little bit. So yeah, anyway, wrist wraps on your hands like this, and it just adds the extra stability, and you can generate force a lot easier. And speaking of generating force, my next tip would be leg drive. Now, this is arguably one of the most important tips I can give you, because the difference between effective leg drive and no leg drive is insane, okay? So when you're doing leg drive, you're not thinking about pushing your ass in the air. You see so many people in their leg drive well, leg drive, their arse comes straight off the bench. Now, that can happen a little bit, but if your arse is just heading straight up, then you're not leg driving effectively. You need to think about pushing the floor away from you and digging your shoulders like up and into the bench, okay? So you're kind of almost pushing yourself up the bench. Now, you can see when I bench, I use a bench mat. The reason, and I say bench mat, it's just a non-slip mat. You can buy them on Amazon. But if you're, especially if you're benching at like Pure Gym or something, you're going to have issues where you slide up the bench if you're leg driving effectively. And so you need that grip really to keep you on the bench. And if you do that and you leg drive really hard, your bench will shoot up, I promise you. And that's the important thing with having good shoes as well, because you can't leg drive properly unless you've got good shoes. Make sure, and you leg drive the whole way through the movement. You don't just push with your legs as you're pushing the bar up. You keep the tension in your quads the whole time when the bar's coming down and up. That's very important. Something a lot of powerlifters who don't take it that seriously overlook is how important chest accessories are. So stuff like pec flies, chest press machine, incline dumbbells, that sort of thing. You need to make sure you're hammering them because you need to get that chest growth, because ultimately the size of your chest has a direct correlation to how much you can bench. So if you have a small chest, you're never going to bench the same as someone with a big chest. It's just not going to happen. So you need to make sure you're doing those things to grow your chest. And again, this is where my free guide comes in. Another shout out to that. If you are interested in seeing how you can really maximize your muscle growth, especially in your chest, then have a look at that guide because it should be hopefully very helpful. But yeah, make sure you're focusing on your other chest exercises, not just bench press. And my final tip for you is the frequency. Now, what I would say is you don't have to wait until your chest is fully recovered to bench again. Now, I would say if you're focusing on hypertrophy, so muscle growth, you want it to be fully recovered because you'll be putting a lot of load through your chest and you need to be fully recovered for it. But for bench, you're just trying to get volume and sets every week to really nail in the technique and just get that accumulative volume. So benching 3 to 4 times a week is where you want to look to be, really, because anything less than 3, you're going to make way more progress if you do 3 or 4 times a week. I personally bench 4 times a week. Now that's not necessary. I would say probably 3 to 4 is where you want to be. I only do 4 because I kind of just want to spread out my volume a little bit. Definitely say try and up the volume. So if you've got an extra leg day, say you've got legs after chest, throw in some bench at the start, and I know you want to do that because less legs then, but throw in some bench at the start because the more volume you can do in the week, the better. Also with that, do not max out every session. In fact, don't max out almost ever because you're really going to hurt your progress. You'll notice if you've ever done a powerlifting program, you will not be hitting max RPE hardly ever, okay? It never really goes above sort of like a 9, and that's like top end week 4, because the thing is, if you hit a max out or hit a max rep or just go to failure, you're gonna exhaust yourself so much for the remaining sessions of the week and you're gonna get basically nothing out of them. You need to make sure that you're following a set plan where you do set reps, tempo, RPE, so that you're not killing your progress every week. Now if you don't want to do that, to simplify it, I would just say the main things to work on is have some variation in sets, reps, and like tempo. So a lot of tempo work, do like a pause in your chest for like 2 seconds, do 3-second negative, do some sets that you're doing higher reps, lower weight. Maybe if you're benching 3 times a week, have like a tempo day, and then you have like a higher reps day, and then you also have like a lower reps, heavier weight day. So that's how I kind of structure it. But ultimately, the more times you can bench within reason, the better. Okay, so I hope that all made sense. And I hope you can use these tips to improve your bench press, because ultimately it's something I really struggled with for a while. And so these tips took my bench from where it was last year to what it is now, and I couldn't be happy with the progress. Now if you enjoyed the video, I have got a video up here which is my max out day on squat, bench, deadlift, so have a look at that to see what sort of numbers I'm putting up on all my lifts. And also don't forget to like and subscribe because that does really help my channel. Now with that being said, I'll see you in the next video.